something we could be more fiscally responsible by handling internally.
I very much respect Ms. Denler's concerns here, and I know that she's had concerns as we move forward with this process to make sure that we're providing direct support to our school sites. And so, firstly, what I want to say is part of Jon Eyler Services will be providing direct services to our school sites. That's really important to know. Working directly with our 6 pilot schools for this year. So that's one very important thing to know. Second of all, I think we really have to look at the big picture here. And the big picture is we have 2 years that we've been designated as significantly disproportionate. We will be taking approximately 15% of our special education budget and putting it into, one, providing services to students in general ed population who are experiencing some behavioral challenges. But 2 is we have these 2 years to create some real systemic changes in our district. And that's where it's so crucially important that we get the services and help from, at this point, 2 of our consultants, Jon Eyler as well as Mary Bacon. Our consultants have been identified through the California Department of Education as those that are there to support districts going through this transition. It truly is, basically it's not just our district, it's not just the state of California, but it's the whole country that's going through this real systemic changes, where we're moving away from just excluding students for some types of behaviors. And I'm not talking about the major behaviors that lead to automatic suspensions, whether it be like weapons or drugs, but more of those behaviors that cause, let's say, disruptions to our schools. And we have to really start making some of those truly paradigm shifts in how we're addressing and understand why are the students exhibiting these kinds of behaviors. And our response, we've been, in general, kind of reactive to those types of behaviors for our students. And if we're really going to make systemic changes in our district, we have to be proactive around creating these cultures in our district that are positive cultures. And what Jon Eyler is able to support us with is what we call the tier 1 of our students. There's that model of there's basically 3 tiers of types of students. One is the tier 1s where the students, those overall kind of cultures in our district that most students will respond to. Then there's the tier 2 where there are some students that are exhibiting some of these behavioral challenges. That basically tier 1 oftentimes should be about 80 to 85% of your students. Then there's the tier 2, which might be between maybe 10 to 15% of your students, where there are some behavioral challenges, but hopefully we can provide supports. Then there's the tier 3 students that are really exhibiting some really major behavioral challenges in our schools, and those are going to require much more intensive types of supports or even an alternative setting. So we really have these 2 years to make these true systemic changes. And I feel very fortunate to have this position as the administrator of equity and disproportionality. But although I've kind of led a school, let's say for 10 years, Pleasant Hill Middle School, in making some of these systemic changes, and I feel really good that a lot of the things that we did there are very much in line with what our consultants are also telling us. And our consultants aren't just saying it from themselves, but they've done the research, and this is nationally based research that shows that this is truly, if you're going to make these cultural changes occur in our schools, this is the kind of moving forward and kind of changes that we have to make. About 2 weeks ago, I was at the workshop for those significantly disproportionate districts in our state, and both Jon Eyler and Dr. Mary Bacon were 2 of the speakers at that workshop. They also had a man named Eddie Fergus who does a lot of the work in New York State and NYU. He was the keynote speaker. And the work that he's doing there in New York State is very similar to the work that we're doing here in California. And in one sense, I'm so optimistic that as a district, as a state, as a country, we're looking at changing the way we work with our students. And I'm just encouraged by this. And I know it's true that maybe we could take this position and hire another person. But after 2 years, we will not have created those systemic changes. And so I think our goal, and I'm here with other members of our equity leadership team, and our goal is to do both. One, to provide some direct services to school sites, but the other is we have to now put systems in place district-wide that are going to bring about those cultural changes. And I very much appreciate Ms. Denler bringing these concerns up. It actually gives me a chance to talk to it, which I never mind doing. And I think we have to keep having those conversations. because it's not like there's a right or wrong answer, but it comes through conversations and seeing where we are for all of us to move forward. And I'd be definitely more than glad to answer any other questions that anybody else might have regarding this.
Thank you, Mr. Roslin. Are there questions from the board, or Mrs. Denler, did you have a follow-up question?
No, I just felt that because of the data, it was for data analysis, we probably could analyze the data ourselves. But if Mr. Roswell feels that we need outside help to analyze the data, I guess we do.
Okay, Mr. Lawrence, did you have a question?
I do. How ongoing do you see our dependence on outside consultants being, and what is our ability, what do you see the progression where we build these capabilities in-house?
That's the whole goal here. We, with our Technology and Information Service Department, with Josh Whitman and Awatif Omar, our goal is to be able to now, through Aries, support to be able to do these kinds of systems. And right now, we are not there yet, but being able to see what that model looks like and teaching us to be able to do it, our goal is either within this year or at the most at the end of next year that we will be able to totally do it. And even before then, our goal is as soon as possible to be able to, within our own information system, which is Aries, to be able to pull that kind of data so that schools individually can start looking at that discipline data and being able to analyze it appropriately.
When you say the end of next year, is that the end of the 14-15 school year, or how do you-
Basically, we have 2 years that we have to apply this 15% or $1 million, and that's for this school year and for next 14-15 school year as well. So definitely way before then, we hope to have that all in place. But that's just for us, hopefully we will not be disproportionate a third year. But our goal is so that we get out of this status of being significantly disproportionate. But we know for at least 2 years, for this year and next year, that's the case, that we have to be applying this 15% or a little over $1 million into creating these systemic changes.
And I saw this as staff's attempt to gain autonomy and independence, and sometimes you need to get that extra support and training so that you can actually do it capably and easily ourselves. So I think the goal is to not stick with a consultant for years and years and years. It's a short-term targeted instruction.
It's absolutely short-term targeted instruction, at 100%.
Okay,
It's
so
all to be done.
thank
When we're
you.
all done with this, it should all be done internally.
Thank you, Mr. Roslin. I think it is to build capacity in our staff. I'm sure that's the goal. Okay, any other questions or comments? Then I would ask if there's a motion on this item, 12.3.
I move approval of the agreement between Mount Diablo Unified School District and independent contractor Jon Eyler.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Oaks. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Mr. Lawrence, and we will take a voice vote again at this time because that's what we need to do. Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Mrs. Oaks?
Yes.
Mrs. Mayo?
Yes.
Mrs. Denler?
No.
And Ms. Hanson, yes. Motion carries 4-1-0, and now we have the electronic voting